this afternoon, I'm going to share you a story of resilience. I'm going to share you a story of overcoming extremely adverse challenges. All right? But before we get started, I have another video I'd like to share with you. This is not photoshopped, ladies and gentlemen. Tyndall Air Force Base took a direct hit from Hurricane Michael.
The last few weather reports we had is this is going to be a strong night for them. And Tyndall is the bullseye. We heard the roof start to tear away. Some really loud metal ripping sounds, and a couple rip, and then we heard the whole thing go. When we walked outside, people weren't really saying a lot. I knew it was short. We could tell that the damage was significant. I think you can probably say in some cases the damage was catastrophic. Our base took a beating and our people took a beating. The recovery effort has been remarkable. It's been amazing. I can tell you with high confidence we're going to be better tomorrow than we are today, because I know for a fact we're better today than we were yesterday. I couldn't be more proud of the 1,000 airmen who have done here today to accomplish all this.
When the evacuation order was given, we had one more meeting that morning, and my spouse and I, we evacuated to Macon, Georgia. And 5 days later, I received a call from my mission support group commander. He says, "We need you." So I came back. But before I came back, I did a couple of things. I know that I needed CCOs. All right? I know that I needed individuals with scar tissue that have been on deployments, all right, that can get the mission done. So I started making calls because everybody was evacuated. We had a CCO embedded in the base recovery element, but given the scope and magnitude of the destructive forces of this storm, only a small contingency from the BRE even came back to Tyndall because the roads were so bad. All in all, we had CCO boots on ground at Tyndall within 24 hours. All right? Thinking after careful consideration of who to recall back to build this team out, I started receiving calls from the right individuals with the right backgrounds that were fire and forget CCOs. They called me. When can I get out there? So we made the determination to go, and we all met out there. And it was intense. It was surreal. I can tell you, you can see pictures, you can see drone video post-storm, and it doesn't do it justice. And for the folks that have been out to Tyndall Air Force Base, they can attest to that. All right, the next call I got was from my buddy, Major Sidor. He said, "Fletch, what can I do to help you?" I said, "Well, look, man, I need real estate. I need somewhere to bed down CCOs. All right, I need somewhere to airlift supplies and CCOs from Herbie to Tyndall." He said, "I got you, man. I got you." All right, make no mistake, the Air Force contracting family is well. I got numerous calls for assistance and support, and there was no playbook, there was no game plan for operating in a cone of silence, but we made it work. All right, with the FICA reachback support, they were able to find me a funding document in the event I needed to stand up a UCA on our BOSS contract. All right, our civil operations flight at Tyndall Air Force Base is contracted out. All right, that was all being worked. The DEAMS coordination, that was being worked at one SOCONS. It came together. All right, one of our first projects we had to do, we had to secure the wing commander's fence, all right? So much lumber and timber destroyed, everything. We had no fence, all right? The base defense squadron came here, TDY, all right? And part of getting them home before the holidays was our ability to execute a temporary fence contract for the installation. It was a $1.8 million purchase order that was cut within 2 days. We were moving and shaking. We were taking risks. The contractor said, well, if you use cement in every post, it's going to take me an additional 45 days to complete. We said, what about every third post? Sure, let's do it. My boss needs a fence. All right? Expedited legal reviews. We had no legal office. Everybody was evacuated. And FICA was instrumental in bringing those things together. As Colonel Blah was alluding to, this thing metastasized so quickly that we didn't have a lot of time on this. And the decision to evacuate undisputedly saved lives that day. So what did we buy? Right after the storm, 95% of the people at Tyndall were not permanently assigned. All right? We had people come into our base to support us, all shapes, sizes, and forms. We had Red Horse. We had Prime Beef. We had Navy Seabees. Guess what? Some of these people, they didn't bring their own supplies. They needed cherry pickers. They needed roofing supplies. They needed tarps. They needed X, Y, and Z. We got it for them. I can attest that the reason we saved the F-22 simulators is because of the rapid response and movement of our CCO's ability to secure roofing and tarping material. I can tell you that we have protected numerous critical comm nodes and facilities from those materials. All right? And that's what we were doing. We were preserving decision space for the wing commander. Demo. Why are we doing a RAD every time we have a phase of demo? Why don't we just do a big RAD that encompasses all post-Hurricane Michael damage? Great idea. Wing commander signed it within an hour. And we are on numerous phases of demolition at Tyndall Air Force Base. Red Horse had a huge demand for aggregate. Our contractors are so good at Tyndall, our civil works contractor called me and said, you guys can use whatever equipment you need to aid in recovery and preservation efforts. I said, sir, I need some aggregate. I need some clean aggregate. He said, I got a 20-ton pile. I'll give you a fair price. And with our expanded use program, we did it. We did it. All right? We didn't need that stuff trucked in. The roads were too bad. All right, so it's that innovation, it's that kind of mindset we were in. We were in declared contingency. We were deployed to work, essentially. I want to talk about a couple challenges we faced. And this is the stuff that keeps squadron commanders up at night. Not knowing where your people are. Let me tell you something, AFPAS is great if you have internet connectivity and electricity, right? So this has really forced us to look about how our people are going to evacuate next go around. And for those of you who aren't tracking, hurricane season starts 1 June. All right, if it tracks east, if it tracks west, where is your designated safe location? Where's it going to be? All right, start thinking outside the box of what would you do to keep a pulse on your personnel in the event of a total comm out. All right, anything that plugged in or anything that needed an internet signal was useless. You know, my pen and paper was my laptop. And essentially everything was handwritten down. There was a lot of fog, there was a lot of friction within the first 72 hours, and that was to be expected. But we got around those. All of our end-of-year actions that we worked so hard, you know, we had the 3rd largest end of fiscal year in FY18. Kaput. All those 19 projects that were on our CTO, all of them got canceled, right? The new buildings we repainted, the new marina we renovated, all right? The new heritage club that we restored, all right? Well, I can tell you the marina is somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, all right? Another significant concern was the area cost factor, and that continues to have me concerned. I can tell you prior to the storm, the price for a a square of tiles, roofing supplies, was about $75. Last time I checked, it was about $375. All right, we saw that with Katrina with the price of lumber. All right. CAT communications was a challenge, as Colonel Blau was alluding to, getting messages from Tyndall to Langley. All right, that was extremely cumbersome and challenging just because we had no reliable cell phone connection, right? Lines of effort did get kind of, wires crossed on that. There was all kinds of stuff generating. I get a call about, this system is leaking radiation. No, that's not the truth. This is what's happening. All right. So a lot of that going on. Looking at these pictures, we slept in the Con's office. C-Mert was there. They had generators. They hooked it up to the wing headquarters, and we slept in the office that didn't have broken glass. Me and my CCOs, every night we were there. After we lost track of how many hours we worked during the day. The middle picture, this storm even had an effect on the local wildlife. That was done by a black bear. That's a door at one of our TLFs. All right. I've already mentioned about the lack of connectivity, laptops. That whiteboard, I know you can't read it, but that identifies key critical facilities that was on the wing commander's priority as saving. It identified the execution method. It identified if the envelope, the building envelope, had been damaged or punctured. All right. It identified the condition of the roof. Did it have water and gas? All right. And again, we had Corps of Engineers down here doing very detailed damage assessments throughout this whole process. Let's talk about the positive. The Requirements Review Board did great. It did. In my opinion, it knocked out a lot of things that would have gotten very hectic very fast. If I knew the Corps of Engineers had a requirement for a 20-ton crane and the Seabees had it, we just had one crane show up one day to knock it out. All right, there was a lot of specialized material handling equipment that we deconflicted through this process. All right, and there was a lot of requirements that came across our desk, and we said, well, who's driving this? What is the truth? Running this to truth? What's the priority? Colonel Jeffson, my MSG, worked well with the PMO to kind of deconflict some of those things. Was there stuff that got through the cracks? Yeah. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. I can tell you the first day we stood up this Requirements Review Board, 2 people showed up. Jordan and I, we briefed Colonel Laidlaw. He said, yeah, we got to run with this. Right? Next day, 5 people. Next day, 10 people. Towards the end, there was standing room only because they knew it wouldn't get done unless they came. And they did. Spend analysis reports. I've had a little bit of familiarity with AFBIT Lite. At MPS, we did a touch on spend analysis and data mining. I tell you what, somebody had the idea of, let's take the spend analysis report, look at what your customers have bought over the past 5 years, hand it to them after the storm and say, look, this is what you lost. I gave each one of my MSG squadron commanders their spend report, and they had no idea what they lost or what they even had. All right, specifically FSS, they kept us extremely busy off that data. All right, want to touch a little bit on commercial smartphone apps, specifically group threads. We set up different threads for CCOs. We set up specific threads for the CCOs, the expanded USGP cardholders, a FICA KC. It worked well because there's a limitation on the iPhone with how many people you can add to a group. All right, we found that worked very well. Just recently, we did a Huracan exercise at Tyndall, and we refreshed the Conzol thread as well. And that was a good vein to get information out to my people. I can tell you every week I had a teleconference with my evacuated personnel. And they had questions, as everybody. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of what's going to happen to Tyndall. And at the end of every conversation, I told them one thing. I can replace things. I can't replace you. all right, and that's the truth. CE has established a facilities disposition review, which was a repeatable process to produce a record of decision for each facility that was identified for either demolition, hold for master plan, or permanent repairs. This process worked very well. At the very beginning, and again, the master planning is the Tyndall of the future, right? At the very beginning, there was a lot being put into the hold for master planning, but what we've seen over the evolution over the past couple of months are more facilities are being pushed to demo, all right? That's driving our different phases of demolition as well, all right? In the state of Florida, you have to have an asbestos and lead survey before you start demo, all right? It has to be recent, it has to be current. We learned from the Corps of Engineers that had phase one that slowed down their progress. So what did we do to get after it? We incorporated it into the requirement. We incorporated a service for archaeologists to be on site into the requirement because we were learning the mistakes from the Corps given the first phase of demo. Request for forces went phenomenal. And I'll get to that at the conclusion of my briefing. The pie chart you see here is trying to get a handle on what we did at end of fiscal year. How many T for Cs? All right, how many of these requirements are still going to require, does the customer even need the stuff anymore? All right? So getting through that process was extremely difficult, but we got there. So I want to talk about a couple of lessons learned, and I broke this down by kind of as a CCO and kind of as a commander on the next slide. We mentioned the blurred lines between recovery and victim status, and that's a true statement. My CCOs lost everything. All base housing was devastated, and it was hard to, put in an honest day's work for honest day's pay and go to your primary residence to try to save your wedding pictures. That was a real thing, okay? Know what's on your base. I had no idea that if you don't shut down an MRI machine in very specific methodical steps, that if the backup generator fails to provide liquid nitrogen to the magnets, bad things can happen. Know what's on your base. All right? Where are the fuses? Where are the munitions? Maintain a robust evacuation and recovery framework. That's something we're getting after right now. We're currently going under a major rewrite of our installation emergency management plan. Base ride-out team, we did not have a contracting asset and a pay agent on the ride-out element. But I can tell you what we did have. We had 14 boss contractors. And if it wasn't for them, post-storm, we would have never energized that grid in the amount of time that we did. But that brings into other questions. Who should and who shouldn't be on the ride-out element? We're looking into that. Hurricane checklists. Hurricane checklists are typically done in increments every 24 hours. When we have hurricane status updates, it's typically every other day, right? This thing changed so fast we didn't have time to run the checklist. Well, what's on the checklist? Does it make sense? All those checklists are going to get rewritten for Tyndall Air Force Base. Single points of failure, I want to touch on efficiency versus effectiveness. Having one cell phone carrier was extremely efficient. When that carrier went down, we were not effective. All right? Evacuation planning at the squadron level, that's something we're rolling out too, based on which way next hurricane could track, getting a list of evacuation addresses. Emergency visitor listing, I encourage you to look beyond your home state for other sources of supply. A lot of our contractors were also devastated by the storm. OCS integration, I want to bring this up because I know we can bake in more OCS core competencies in the future. The RFF was great. The Requirements Review Board was great. What about an OXIC cell? What about something else? I know there's goodness here. And in the future contingency in response to a natural disaster, I know we can get better at it. We didn't practice like we played for this one. Cat 3 was the highest we went. So again, practice like you play. We're getting after updating our plans and making them better. And if any of you have any questions or would like to see our updated plans, I'd be more than willing to share that with you. All right. Again, I touch on this theme of there was no playbook for this. There was no, we thought we'd be evacuated for a couple of days and then come home to Tyndall. All right. We had people that didn't take their laptop. We had people that didn't take their uniforms. All right. There was no bug out bag. All right. We didn't do this. Tyndall never gets hit. We're protected by the bighorn. All right. Not so much. I used what resources I had, and we rolled out, and we made it happen. All right? Colonel Laidlaw always talks about these small wins, keep forward momentum. He said, I need another small win. I can tell him, sir, we are 72% complete with grinding every stump on Tyndall Air Force Base. He said, that's what I needed to hear today. All right? Small wins. If I can take a defender off an ammo gate 24/7 and get him a lockable gate, that's a small win. Okay? You got to trust the doers, and you know who they are, and let them roll, because they will impress you. It's never too late to revamp your strategy. I throw that in there to make sure everybody understands how they fit in with the big picture, how their recovery, preservation, and restoration operations are going to contribute to the mission of Tyndall Air Force Base. And don't make it complex. Don't overthink and make a bad decision, okay? And you might feel alone. You know, we keep hearing this theme, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. There was a lot of that going on. There was, all right? You gotta do something, because the moment you don't anticipate your customers or requirement owners' needs and demands and services, we don't wanna wait. We wanna get ahead of it. We want to give them the spend analysis support. Get with CE, get with your BCE. What do you need? All right, pull the requirements out of them if you have to. Stay positive, life goes on. You got to make your people feel whole, and you've got to know when to take a knee. Operating in a contingency environment is the best drug in contracting. We love it. All right? We love being there. We love being in the thick of it. We love finding solutions, finding ways to get yes. All right? But if you run in the red, you're going to break something over a period of time. Thank God, my lovely spouse, Stephanie, hey, you can't even remember what we talked about 15 minutes ago. I think it's time for you to come home for a day. I'll listen to the general. All right? Keep an eye on your people, too. You know? Having SOCONs open up their arms, having their TLF and VOQ, having that facility just to have a decent night's sleep, to recharge and reset. Got to keep an eye on your folks. So let me talk about where we're at Tyndall. So it's been a bit after the storm. I can tell you 2 months after the storm, we're still making it happen. All right? The Weapons Evaluation Group is still launching QF-16 drones over the Gulf of Mexico. And yes, that is a QF-16 unmanned picture. All right, they're having WESIP exercises. All right, this is the only place in our nation's military where pilots can shoot a missile at something flying over the Gulf of Mexico. That's a big deal. All right. The Air Control School. Guess what? They're still graduating air battle managers. All right? Right after the storm, we gave them that capability and helped them get there as a team sport. Red Horse is graduating combat engineers. This year, they're going to have their largest graduating class. All right? Our engineers are learning how to use really cool technology to get after runway damage. All right? They're learning how to use surveying equipment to go downrange. This is happening at Tyndall right now. All right? 1st Air Force, America's Air Operations Center, monitoring all of the airspace over the continental United States. They're back in action 24/7. All right? One thing that's not up here is our CCOs directly contributed to the ability to provide LO maintenance for our Raptors. Low observable maintenance. It's happening right now because of what they did. Where are we going? In December, Secretary Wilson announced that Tyndall Air Force Base would be the future home of up to 3 F-35 squadrons by the year 2023. We got to get busy. We got to get busy. What that looks like short term, how are we going to execute $300 million of FSRM by FY19? How are we going to pay for $3 billion rebuild? All right? These are bigger decisions. All right? The MQ-9. Right now, we're doing an environmental impact analysis. Tyndall Air Force Base was identified as the preferred location for MQ-9. All right? Talk about projecting combat capability if these things happen in 2023. It's going to be huge. Here's my favorite slide. These individuals volunteered to come to Tyndall away from their families and loved ones and friends to come under some very, very bad living conditions, all right, to work very long hours to preserve, restore, and recover our installation. And I personally want to thank the commanders and the spouses for letting them come here. And they truly are America's best.